Hello, my name is Dr. William E. Hamilton, PhD. I thank you for the opportunity to present the results of my dissertation research project from the University of Arizona Global Campus, UAGC. Data collection for the study was roughly from February to April of 2023. Several sample pools were solicited, 2 pools responded. Analysis followed, as did the completion of chapters 4 and 5. The final oral defense, manuscript publication, and graduation in October of 2023. So thank you. Thank you to all those who participate. I present English as a foreign language, teachers' use of intercultural competence tests to inform teaching practices. This is an overview of what I intend to cover, about the speaker, why this study, problem, purpose, importance, research question, literature review, methodology, research findings, implications, and what's next. About the speaker, I have a Doctor of Philosophy in Organizational Development and Leadership with a specialty in training and e-learning. I am a retired U.S. Navy Surface Warfare Officer, an 04 or Lieutenant Commander, known as a Major in the other 3 services for 23 years. I was a lecturer at the Malaysian Maritime Academy for about 10 years. I have been a certified professional in talent development, CPTD, for 7 years with the Association for Talent Development. Also with them, a Best Awards and an Excellence Awards judge for the past 5 years. Recently, an Intercultural Development Inventory Qualified Assessor, and for the past 4 years, a qualified English as a foreign language teacher. I aspire to make an impact with intercultural competence assessments and evaluation on culturally responsive practices or teaching practices, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging outcomes for business impact. Before we get going, here are some questions to think about during the presentation, and I'll get back to these later in the presentation. I gave the results at the University of Arizona Global Campus 2023 Teaching and Learning Conference in early November, and I did a poll. So I'll share those results at the end, and you can also be included. So why this study? As a researcher by interest, my initial interests were on personality traits like Briggs-Myers, DISC, Big 5, leadership, and so on. But researching personality traits is complex due to subjectivity, lack of consensus, cultural variations, reliability and validity issues. As an EFL teacher, I noticed cultural diversity concerns in language learning. For example, the content that I was teaching. Between personality traits and cultural interests, teaching EFL and culturally diverse concerns led to an interest in measuring and applying cultural sensitivity using instruments. For example, the Kushner 1986 instrument and the Stewart 2010 dissertation. But, 1986 was a bit dated, so a search of the Kushner name led to the revised Mahoney-Kushner 2014 instrument and other references, for example, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. So my demographic needs were qualified EFL teachers, at least 21 years of age, 1 year of teaching culturally diverse adult learners. The outcomes of the study, explored the measurement of cultural sensitivity among EFL teachers and the intersection of cultural diversity concerns and language learning as intercultural competence. Also revealing valuable insights into the teacher perceptions and practices, emphasizing cultural affirmation of value, responsiveness, and student-teacher collaboration in problem solving. Problem, purpose, importance of the study. Problem. Lack of intercultural competence teaching standards leads to inconsistent intercultural competence self-assessment use among EFL teachers. Purpose. Explore links between assessment scores, EFL teacher perceptions, self-assessment gaps, and culturally responsive teaching. Importance. informing effective teaching and fostering culture responsive EFL education. Research question: how do EFL teachers' perceptions of their teaching practices change following a self-assessment of their intercultural competence? The literature review, here's a representation of it. So the literature review explored the research problem for a certain level of intercultural competence in culturally diverse online classrooms. One of the first things covered was the search strategy of scholarly research articles, books, Procrast, EBSCO, Sage, Kindle, Google, and more. And about 75% of these references were between 2015 and 2022. And of course, expanded to include similar works. Also discussed was social constructivism, that is, reality is socially constructed as experiences, sense-making, and negotiated understanding. Also covered was my philosophical worldview, the challenge between non-traditional and traditional views, such as Eastern philosophical thought, acknowledging the freedom, openness, and oneness of nature and the universe, as opposed to the traditional Western dogma and positivism. Also covered was intercultural competence, fostering meaningful intercultural awareness, interaction, sensitivity between the various groups. Talked about the definition of it, the measures of it, applying it, misconceptions, development, and teaching. In applying intercultural competence, that is, the intentional relationships, dialogue, and interaction between individuals in culture, the review discussed, the history of it, complexities of it, and linking it to the classroom, which was very important. So also covered was the methodology or methodologies. This particular study was a qualitative single case study in a bounded system, that is, of EFL teachers. Instrumental were two studies, the Churchill study and the P.N.E.D.X. study. The Churchill study was about reconceptualizing traditional functional language teaching, for example, grammar, pronunciation, learning skills, and pedagogy by improving student engagement and agency in the context of global citizenship and cultural awareness. Problem solving. The P.N.E.D.X. study took a comprehensive look at teacher profiles for insights into how English language teaching can help develop intercultural communication competence through teaching practice that transforms language learning. And one of the last things covered in the review were the available instruments used in both short and long-term studies. For example, the IDI, or the Intercultural Development Inventory, and the one used in this study, the Inventory of Cross-Cultural Sensitivity, version 2, ICCSV2. This is a depiction of the conceptual framework that guided the study and represents my initially socially constructed integration of intercultural competence into the teaching practices of PFL teachers based on search, analysis, and coding of the literature review we just discussed. The red, white, and the green shaded areas represent those concepts concentrated on in the study. Right? For example, red being EFL teachers, white being teaching practices, intercultural competences, green consists of intercultural anxiety or fear, cultural inclusion, cultural behavior integration or actions, and cognitive flexibility or openness. Now, the assigned colors were arbitrary and assigned by ATLAS software based on the coding system that I use. I couldn't change it to make this diagram. The gold and purple shaded areas discovered during the review might only be covered to the extent that it support those concentrated on in the study. So, for example, the gold was strategies and purple teaching model. Methodology. Again, it was a in the study a qualitative case study approach. Data collection was an online survey using SurveyMonkey to collect both the intercultural competence self-assessment data and the consent form. At the end, there was a link to schedule a follow-on semi-structured interview using Zoom. Data analysis was using the computer software ATLAS.ti 23. And as a side note, when I first started, like during the review, it was ATLAS.ti 9. Research findings, the major theme, conceptual framework. There were two conceptual frameworks. This is the second one derived from the first one. So there are four themes here. The first one was, you can see on the left in the middle, communication and classroom dynamics expressed as addressing cultural challenges and promoting intercultural understanding, effective communication strategies, intercultural communication dynamics, challenges and norms, and promoting accountability, fairness, and ethical behavior. Note here that effective communication strategies may influence the promotion of accountability, fairness, and ethical behavior. So this theme was made up of, transcribed notes from the participants. So participant number 1 mentioned tying this to diversity and inclusion and taking elements of that when thinking about being more inclusive of people from other cultures. Under the same thing, participant number 4's experience was that you can't make jokes, and usually discourages it because the students are general language learners and not very advanced, and they don't understand the nuances. At the bottom, we see the second theme in this major theme, education and teaching approaches, expressed as effective instructional practices and curriculum design, intercultural education and teaching approaches. Note, effective instructional practices and curriculum design supports the implementation of intercultural education and teaching approaches. Under this theme, participant number 1 spoke about going back about 15 years or so, and that nowadays a culturally diverse online classroom would be a mix of students who are not obviously studying about other cultures, but learning about them through community-based, task-based activities, problem solving, pretty much, where they are working together to focus on improving their English. At the top, the third theme in this major theme is intercultural awareness and sensitivity, cultural values, cultural affirmation, cultural responsive teaching practices, effective intercultural communication, intercultural awareness and sensitivity, supportive intercultural classroom environment. Note here that culturally responsive teaching practices and effective intercultural communication can integrate to create a supportive intercultural classroom environment. Now, under this thing, participant number 4 talked about intercultural interactions in the classroom, suggesting he could feel sometimes among his students, he can feel discomfort, especially if there's somebody from Europe and somebody from India. Quote unquote, it's easy to see, and this arises mostly because of culture. The last theme covered under the major theme number 4, personal growth and professional development, expressed as growth and development of teachers' intercultural competence, personal and professional development of intercultural competence, self-reflection and awareness. So in this study, deep reflection, self-reflection was important. Note here that growth and development of teachers' intercultural competence is a developmental stage towards achieving personal and professional development of intercultural competence. And no one exuded this more than the participant number 7. So under this thing, participant number 7, one of the teachers in one of the pools had more than 35 years of teaching and talked about the assessment making her more mindful of when she goes back into the classroom. Research findings continue the inventory of cross-cultural sensitivity assessment scores. Right, this is an image or visualization of those assessment scores from the Mahone and Kushner 2014 instrument, and was important to the interview process. Right, 7 participants took the assessment, but only 4 did both the assessment and the semi-structured interview. That'd be number 1, 4, number 6, and number 7. So as you can see from the figure here, 4 and 7 had the highest of those scores and interviews, and this is shown by all green. The Intercultural Competence Assessment scores help facilitate deep reflection of participants' perceptions of their teaching practices. For example, asking them about their scores, what they actually score versus what they perceive score was, primed them for follow-on questions. Right, in the interview, there was some protocol questions. The visualizations that scores were formulated, that is, no such representations were depicted in any other studies. This was a first for visualizations of this kind here, to my knowledge, and this was because the committee members suggested by the participants seeing their raw scores, it might dissuade them from continuing. So I devised a traffic light or stoplight color scheme, which I got from my Navy days, that can facilitate a conversation. So P6 was the only participant anywhere close to anything like discomfort, but it was more a feeling of being forced to answer questions a certain way than discomfort. She seemed to feel she was being, in her own words, pigeonholed into certain thinking and answers that she was just unwilling to concede. Research findings, major combined themes you can see on the left by participants on the right. Participants 1, 4, right, 6, and 7. Okay, so this is a visualization of a Sankey diagram, which is essentially a cross-tab table, right? So if we see the themes on the left as in rows, participants on the right as in columns, and in the middle you would have numbers, right, in the cell. Okay, so when you look here, right, you see the lines or flows, as they're called, in the middle represents the data, right, the numbers in the cell or quotations used for the themes on the left by the participants on the right. And if we look, you can see here the theme, and then there's this little indentation or white wedge. This is a separation of the themes. And you can see the same thing with the participants on the right. That's how they're separated. So continuing, right? So if we look at the top on participant number 7, we look at the thick line or flow to personal growth and professional development. That line was thicker than any other one, more so than any other participant, right, for personal growth. So this is another Sankey diagram, right? Major combined themes, right? Themes on the left by our participant assessment scores on the right, variations of it. Right, so we have mixed scores, maybe yellow, all green, etc. So only participants 4 and 7 had all green, and participants 1 and 6 had mixed scores. Right, so if you look at the scores for the participants, the ones all green, so you look on the right, about halfway, you can see that that line is the biggest or largest there. And so that would indicate that they had the largest contribution to the things. Implications for theory and practice, right? Transformative potential. Self-assessment tools enhance EFL teachers' intercultural competence. Integrating comprehensive assessment frameworks enhances the understanding of intercultural competence. The study underscores the transformative potential of assessment in expanding the dynamic nature of intercultural competence. The CEFR, or Common European Framework of References for Languages, and the TESOL standards are prescriptive, right, not mandatory, frameworks highlighting the importance of specifying assessments, performance objectives, and proficiency standards to enhance intercultural competence. The research contributes two conceptual frameworks to the field of EFL teaching and intercultural competence. This first one we've already seen. This is actually the second, and it is derived from the combined concepts of the four individual EFL teachers. That's this one. This one is a combined EFL teacher perception and teaching practices conceptual framework, and it's integrated directly from the coded themes of each of the four EFL participants, right? So the transcripts are coded and themed for each participant, and then those are integrated or combined to create this one. So in this one, I'm not going to read the detailed description of each theme. I'll just read the theme. You can stop the frame and look at them. So the first of the 7 themes for this combined theme conceptual framework is EFL teacher perceptions and attitudes. And number 2, we looked at the top right, intercultural competency and awareness. Number 3, back to the left and to the bottom, classroom environment and dynamics. Number 4 at the bottom, communication and interpersonal challenges. Number 5, top left, teaching strategies, approaches, and methods. Number 6 at the top, personal growth, reflection, and development. And the last one, number 7, right near the bottom, social context and cultural factors. And so, as promised, we're back, because we're near the end at the questions. And as I mentioned, right, these were questions when I gave, when I presented the results at the University of Arizona Global Campus 2023 Teaching and Learning Conference from 7 to 9 November. I also did a poll. So these are the results from the poll. So the first question was, how would you think about your intercultural competence? We can see there are about 14 answers here. And there were some that commented in the chat. So the answers here vary from wanting to know more to okay, average, needs improvement, and high, basically. So during the semi-structured interview, deep reflection on such questions, not these specifically, I had my own 9 protocol questions, and then asking about their own practices and what this looked like in the classroom facilitated great discussions of intercultural or EFL teachers' experiences and in culturally diverse classrooms. The second question, how does your personal intercultural competence impact your teaching practices? There are about 8 responses here. You can see, very high, positive, intense, significant. So most people queried, acknowledged that the intercultural competence impacts their teaching practices, and there didn't seem to be any dispute here. And the last question, number 3, if you're not currently teaching, how might your understanding of intercultural competence impact your daily interactions? These seem to be varied here, right? But they seem to acknowledge the importance of equity, that intercultural competence impacts performance, inner satisfaction. It has something to do with emotional intelligence and the need to share personal interactions and remove bias. So here we are again. So thank you for the opportunity to share my research. Please continue the conversation, answering these questions or the conversation in any format you may be listening to this presentation in, to help facilitate deep reflection and possibly action. Right. So please leave your comments and questions as appropriate. And thank you very much, and have a good day. No, great day.